Hello everybody, my name's Aubrey and I'm an opera singer and a voice coach. You can see here today that I'm in my comfy clothes and have a bit of tea, and that's how you know I'm going to be settling down into some good music. I'm going to be talking a little bit about how I learn a new piece, and we're going to take a peek at Strauss's Zeichnung from Die letzte Blätter because I'm going to be singing that a little bit later. This is my very first time doing a voiceover, and it does feel a little bit like ASMR, so apologies in advance if it doesn't actually end up turning out how I envisioned. Anyway, I have been asked countless times by my students to explain to them what a quote-unquote good practice session looks like, but in reality that's really hard for me to define. Today, you can decide for yourself if anything that I do might be useful to implement into your own routine. The way that you practice should ultimately be defined by what you actually need to accomplish and how you personally learn best. Showing my process is something that I definitely feel insecure about, if I'm being honest. So much so that on a normal day, I might prefer to practice when I'm completely alone in the house because it's just not fun to show my imperfections while learning. But I recognize that it's also important to know that all of us have to start somewhere. Of course, I'm going to be editing this video example so it doesn't run on forever, but on average, I practice anywhere between 45 minutes and an hour in total. However, I will take breaks throughout in order to get a little bit of rest, listen back on some recordings of myself, or take a drink of water. As a background, I'm kind of familiar with this piece. I've heard other people sing it, but I'm hoping to learn all the songs in this particular cycle because I plan on singing them soon. I love Strauss. I think the cycle is just gorgeous. Now into the real talk. Some teachers recommend not listening to other singers before you start your own studies, so as not to influence your own interpretation, while others encourage it in an effort to speed up the learning process. I'm somewhere in the middle, with an idea that I like to call the training wheels method. I listen to other singers just until I know the very, very basics, and then I take the proverbial training wheels off. You don't want to be too comfortable with another singer's version because you might subconsciously start imitating their style, which makes it very hard for you to remove later on. As a note, it's okay to stop listening to example recordings before you're 100% learned. And in fact, I think that that works better for me and it provides me a little bit more freedom. In conjunction to not copying any of my colleagues, I ultimately compare myself less to them through the process and spend more time focusing on my own technique. I don't want to end up distracting myself by the talents of others. I want to spend more time focusing on myself. It definitely helps keep a positive attitude as I practice because it prevents me from getting down on myself too quickly. Sometimes our own critiques are really harsh and can stop us from reaching our full potential prematurely. Once I feel like I've learned the piece's outline, I will sit in front of a piano and practice each line, no more than a couple bars at a time. This sounds really tedious, but it definitely works. The best part of going through each line so thoroughly is that I find myself making less permanent bad habits because I catch them earlier in my process, preventing them from being solidified in the final product and needing me to go back after the fact to fix them. Depending on the day, I might just start by doing the rhythms, then the melody with the rhythm. I'm not adding the words just quite yet. I like to spend time with the prose on its own so that I can think a lot about the emotional context, and ultimately that helps me to memorize the lyrics with much more speed and accuracy, but we'll talk about that later. As I'm going through each line musically, I like to double check my work by playing the piano along with myself as I sing. This ensures that any issues that might pop up with pitch are noticed super quickly. Something new that I've added to my own practice routine actually came from some of my chats with Barbara Bonney, who taught me about her style of learning music. She mentions, in conjunction to having a similar technique as I do for learning the basics of music, she simultaneously will begin the process of memorization through curated repetitions and copying the text by hand. Right now, I have no need to memorize this piece, but by taking it step by step, I've increased the times that I have gone through the piece as a whole, and it will ultimately shorten the amount of time I'll have to spend on memorization overall. Now that I've spent some time with this piece and gotten to know it more intimately, I can start looking at the lyrics. When I'm getting to know the words, I like to do a little bit of background on both the librettist and the composer. Sometimes it can be very helpful to know the historical context of this piece as well, or any traditional venues of its performances. Now that we've talked about learning the music and the lyrics, I feel ready to start putting it together. It's not really until about this moment that I feel comfortable doing a full or partial run of the piece. I'm sure this probably looks really slow and arduous, but it works for me personally and actually makes the learning process a bit shorter in the long run than if I were to simply plow through the music over and over and over again from start to finish. I'm sure plenty of people have already learned this technique if they spent any time in a conservatory or worked in choirs or have taken voice lessons before, but I've come across many people who are just beginning and might not know that this is a popular way for those of us in the professional singing world to begin the challenging task of learning a piece of music from scratch. Ultimately, I really hope that this answers some questions that you might have about what a practice looks like for me and for many others. I don't try and make the process of learning music mysterious or gate-kept in any way, but I think that using these ideas are relatively accessible and could be adopted by many different people who are interested in learning how to sing. Although trying to learn a new piece might seem incredibly daunting, I encourage you to remember that common phrase, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Try not to be overwhelmed by the complexity of your potential goals. Focus on the little things that you can do today, and know that with time, effort, a little bit of self-love, and forgiveness, you can achieve anything that you set your mind to. If you ever need help, remember that there are voice coaches out there who are happy to give you a little bit of extra guidance and encouragement when you need it. Thanks for spending this rehearsal time with me, and remember to keep on singing.